special guest with us this week. We have the commissioner of the Colonial Athletic Association and a staunch supporter, of course, of college athletics, Joe D'Antonio, and a New Englander, just like a couple of us on the call here. So, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, a fun time to be in the CAA right now. How have you been enjoying this first month?
Well, first and foremost, Jake, to you and the crew, thanks for having me on. Very much appreciated. You know, it's been a very successful month so far of CAA men's basketball. We are really excited about the start that some of our teams have. We have quite a few teams here right at the top. Very exciting, and we hope that can continue here as we move through the course of the season.
And it's been a pivotal year for the CAA. Obviously, teams like Hampton, Stony Brook, Monmouth, North Carolina A&T, they're all members of now part of this expansion. So how has the process been adding new faces and new people to the table? And, you know, how have you navigated those waters this season?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Will. You know, I think anytime you go through change, there's always going to be some situations that you need to make sure you're organized with and pivot around. But for the most part, as it relates to how our basketball teams have acclimated themselves, we're obviously very happy with the additions that we've made, and I think they're happy to be a part of what we're trying to build here at the CAA. So it's really been a win-win situation for both of us. You know, a couple of those teams are off to a little bit of a tough start. You know, I know that I've had a chance to see Monmouth a couple of times. I've seen Stony Brook a couple of times, and they're going through a few growing pains right now. I mean, you look at Monmouth in the course of their recent history, they've done very well and been very successful. They have a very young team this year, but they, like the other members that we've added, are going to be very good fits for the conference as we go forward. And we know that King, Rice, and our other new coaches will continue to rise the level of their programs.
And Joe, to take that a step further here, not asking you to divulge the whole vetting process or anything like that, but what were some of those things you looked for that really stood out with those 4 new programs that you thought would be, along with the rest of your team, a great fit for the CAA?
Yeah, you know, Jake, it's a really good question, and I'll try to answer it too with a little bit of obviously a men's basketball lens or women's basketball lens, because I know that's one of the things we're talking about here today. But we really went through not a ton of specific criteria, but really focused on 3 or 4 things. The first one was that the institutions needed to be a geographic fit within the footprint of the CAA. I mean, obviously with our full members, we stretch from North Carolina. It's right there. We stretch from Northeastern and Boston all the way down to South Carolina. And then if you add our football members in, we go all the way from Orono, Maine to South Carolina. So we needed that footprint to stay really on the East Coast. And with our new additions, you know, that's what we found. Second of all, we were specifically focused on institutions that were committed to the academic well-being of not only their student athletes, but really their student body as a whole. And for the institutions that we've added, you know, we've added all great academic institutions that are committed to the academic success of their students and making sure that they are prepared for what lies next in their lives, and hopefully the opportunity to fulfill whatever their goals and dreams might be. And that may sound a little corny, but that's a really big deal, right? That, you know, athletics isn't going to last forever. And we wanted to make sure that the schools that we brought in were aligned from an academic standpoint to make sure that they're positioning their student athletes and just students overall to be successful going forward. And then finally, you know, from an athletic standpoint, we wanted folks that were committed to the overall well-being and improvement of not only their student athletes, but their athletic department and athletic programs as a whole. And in everything we do in life, we can always get better, right? And our institutions, from an athletic standpoint, are exactly the same. Whether it's members that we already have in the conference or the new members that we've added, everyone is committed to that level of improvement. And that's really what we were looking for and looking at, especially as it relates to committing resources, committing energy, and specifically being committed to getting better in men's and women's basketball. And I really think that with the institutions that we've added, with our current members, the conference is headed in the right direction in those areas.
Joe, given that the landscape of college athletics is kind of shifting consistently. Are there more expansion plans in the future, or are you guys more planning to cross that bridge when you come to it, as far as having to, deal with things changing?
Yeah, Phil, here's how I'll answer that question, and it's really how I've answered it whenever asked, even before the expansion. Is we live in an environment right now in the world of college athletics where nothing is standing still. And, from a membership standpoint, we are constantly watching the landscape, surveying the landscape, understanding what's happening. And really what I'm going to do as the commissioner, what our board of directors members are going to do, and what our athletic directors are going to do with me going forward is we're just going to continue to make decisions that we feel are going to be the best for the CAA and the future of the CAA going forward. And as long as we're sticking to those parameters and making those good decisions, understanding that going forward, I think we're going to be in a really good spot.
Joe, with National Signing Day and the transfer portal and all these things opening up this week, it's a very big week for everybody around the college landscape. We've talked about expansion, but as you look at your current member institutions, how do you continue to re-recruit them just as coaches would re-recruit their players and keep them in the league?
Well, I think, Brian, one of the biggest things that we have right now on our side that not a lot of conferences in the mid-major category have is we have great stability right now. We've added the new members. When Campbell comes in next year, we're going to be at 14 full members, and we've really solidified ourselves for what the future holds and being able to meet all of these challenges such as NIL, transfer portal, et cetera, head on. And we don't have schools that are looking over their shoulder wondering, okay, am I going to be in this conference tomorrow? Do they want me here? Do I want to be here? I think we all know that through this process, the 14 institutions want to be together. And that's a really important piece right now, because we're in a period of time of great uncertainty in many areas. And for us to have that level of stability as a conference is really important.
And you talked about the NIL briefly. Clearly, it's something on the rise for college athletics. In your eyes, though, what's the CAA's stance on NIL, and what should be the role of conferences versus the individual schools in those decisions?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Will. The conference office is involved in a lot of things, okay? NIL really is not something that focuses on what we're doing day-to-day from a conference office standpoint. It really lies in the hands of the member institutions. Where we do play a key role, and we're very fortunate to have John Heck, our Associate Commissioner for Compliance, as part of our team at the CAA, is we're there anytime we can be of assistance in answering questions or navigating the compliance landscape relative to NIL issues. Aside from that, as it relates to the financial aspect of what's going on with NIL on each campus, those are really dictated by campus to campus decisions. So we're here to support. We will have conversations with our athletic directors and our administrators relative to best practices and what's happening both on the national and local landscape. But those are really decisions day to day that are being made on our individual campuses.
Joe, from your perspective as sort of the senior leader of the CAA, right? And, someone that guides the ship, how game-changing is NIL for the student athletes that are in those member institutions? And, is there some sort of opportunity maybe that the CAA can benefit from with the gates basically being opened on NIL now?
Well, I'm going to couple it, Jake, not only with NIL, but I'm going to add the transfer portal in there as well, right? And I think the best way to look at it is, and I was speaking with one of our men's basketball coaches over the summer who referred to it this way, and I couldn't agree with him more. The landscape has shifted, and what you need to do to be successful has likely shifted. And you're either going to shift with the landscape and adapt almost like a chameleon, right? Adapt to the landscape to become successful, or likely you're going to be left behind. The great news for us as a conference with our men's and women's basketball programs is I do feel as though we're approaching it the right way, that the coaches are dialed into a changing and shifting landscape, and everyone is doing their part to make sure that our member institutions are going to be successful as we go forward, even with these new challenges that are on the table. Every school's going to find a different way to tackle them, but everybody has their kind of eyes open as to what needs to be done to have that level of success going forward.
You talked about one of your new member institutions, and that's Monmouth. And King Rice, we've already mentioned it. That's a guy you've known. It's a guy you've worked with when you were at Providence. He was an assistant coach. Obviously, he had a standout career playing at North Carolina back in the late 80s. And now you get to work with him in a new capacity as Monmouth comes in. Can you comment on what a guy like King Rice brings to the table as a conference in addition to the student athletes at Monmouth?
Yeah, and I just have a ton of respect for King, Jake. I mean, he does things the right way. He's a great family guy. He's a great husband. He's a solid coach, and he's everything that's right in my mind about college athletics, and that he understands the aspect of the importance of winning, and he's done that, right? He's been very successful in his career at Monmouth. A little bit of a down year right now, but certainly that's an aberration. We know that they'll be back on the radar here. But he also understands that he's a leader of men, and that while coaching is important, making sure that his players are prepared both physically, mentally, and socially, academically here as they go forward in their life, and what the importance of that is, you can't underestimate those things. And King is such a great leader in that regard. So we're just really fortunate that as a member, with Monmouth now being a member, and King, we're very fortunate to have King as part of our conference.
So when we discuss the sort of the exposure that the CAA gets to the national audience, the TV and sort of the streaming aspect is definitely one that stands out. So the CAA obviously currently signed on with CBS Sports Network this season. Championship and semifinals are going to be available to the national audience here as well. Looks like 18 men's hoops games in total. What do you think, Joe, from your perspective? I mean, obviously it's the national audience and the exposure that's second to none. But what should we expect this year with, getting more games on TV and, how much of a game changer is that for the conference at this point?
Well, here's the thing, Jake. We're really fortunate, as you just noted, we're really fortunate to have two great media partners, really three if you add in the Lacrosse Sports Network. I know we're not talking lacrosse, but they're also a really big and important partner to us. But our two primary media partners kind of day to day are Flow Sports, that handles all of our streaming for us. They've been just a great partner and really good to deal with. And then you mentioned obviously CBS Sports Network and the national exposure that they're bringing to us from both a men's basketball and a women's basketball standpoint. And, we're incredibly fortunate this year, like you mentioned, when you combine our semifinals and our finals, we're going to have upwards of 18 men's basketball games broadcast on national TV. Our women's championship game this year is also going to be broadcast on national TV. And I really think these are watershed moments for the conference. I mean, it's really tremendous to think that as a mid-major conference that we've been able to work hand in hand with our media partners to develop that level of national exposure. There's not another conference our size in the country that has that. And it's something that we should celebrate and be proud of. But I think it also just speaks volumes to our overall package, the quality of play in the conference and what we're bringing to the table.
Joe, two other points on the exposure piece that we were talking about. First of all, there was this year Charleston winning the Charleston Classic, a big MTE victory for them. You beat Virginia Tech, get on national TV, and you see Pat Kelsey jumping around with the students and everything else, and that crazy environment. And then last year, and we'll focus a little more on this, UNC Wilmington winning the CBI championship, which is another big moment for the conference and for Takeo Siddle and for the Seahawks. That tournament has been very much maligned, as has the Basketball Classic. But for mid-major conferences, for teams within your league, what have those two tournaments meant, and what has Wilmington's title meant to this league?
Yeah, Brian, I think anytime there can be a level of success, either in the postseason or in any one of these MTE tournaments, it's a really big deal for the conference. And I had a chance. Let's take them in order. I had a chance to be with the UNCW for their championship run last year in the CBI, and it was a great experience. I wasn't there for all the games. I was there for the championship game. And certainly, they showed that they're a quality basketball team. And I really think that it helped them as an organization and as a team as we moved into this year to have that type of experience and that type of tournament experience under their belt. And then, can't say enough about what Matt Roberts as the athletic director and Pat Kelsey as the head coach have done at the College of Charleston. I was there at the championship game a couple of weeks ago. I was right there when Pat jumped into the stands, and he's a high energy guy, and he's got them playing well. So both of those scenarios that you mentioned, really exciting for those institutions, but also really exciting for the conference as well.
And while we were talking about King earlier, it kind of brought to mind the quality and the caliber of coaches in this league. We were just talking about Pat and about Takeo. When people look at this league and they see the people leading these programs, how significant is it to have names like Pat Kelsey and Takeo Siddle and King Rice in this league?
Yeah, it's really big. I mean, you can add. I'm not going to be able to list all to the time we have all 13 or 14 coaches, but we're really fortunate right now that we have a great group of head coaches, both on the men's side and on the women's side. It's a really, really big thing for our conference, and it's huge in recruiting, right? It's ultimately it's about the Jimmies and the Joes and the Sallys and the Janes. That's where it all boils down to when it's all said and done. And I'll go back to something I said about King, because I think you can translate that right over to all of our coaches on the men's and women's side, and that is they're leader of people. And they understand not only the importance of the game and the importance of winning, but they also understand the role that they're playing in the individual lives of their student athletes and preparing them for what their future holds. And that's a really big thing and can't be over or understated. And we're very fortunate to have the men and women that we have in those positions.
So another interesting twist to that too is it's not just the coaches that are getting involved in the day-to-day lives. It's also you, right? You've grown to be one of the more visible commissioners in the nation for sure, including the Practice with the Commissioner initiative that puts you on the map. For those that don't know, basically participating in on-campus workouts with each CAA championship team. That is something that I don't think any other commissioner really does, or at least gets out there the way that you do. Any memorable moments over the past couple of years? Obviously I'm sure COVID might have derailed a little bit of it, but what sticks out, maybe a couple of practices that you remember?
Well, there's been a lot of memorable moments, Jake. I can tell you that. First of all, it's been a great program. It was 100% my creation. It just kind of came to my mind one day, and I called the NCAA and I said, "Hey, I'm going to do this. Is there any problem with it?" And they said, "No, you're good. There's no violations there. You can go ahead and do it." And we went full bore for a couple of years, and then unfortunately we had to put it on hold because of COVID. And I'm bringing it back this year, maybe a soft way, and then we'll have, I think, a full rollout of the program again in 23, 24. But it's really provided an opportunity for me to step behind the scenes a little bit and kind of go into the laboratory of our student athletes, right? Whether on the practice field with the coaches. And it's allowed them to maybe see me in a little bit of a different light, which I think is important. You can't just be the person sitting behind the desk, making phone calls and returning emails every day. It's really important to be out amongst the membership. And this has given me an opportunity to be involved with the student athletes in a way that you really never have an opportunity to be. So it's been a lot of fun. In terms of some funny stories, I think the best, I went down to William and Mary for a swimming practice a couple of years ago. And I can swim, but I'm not a great swimmer. And they interviewed the coach after the practice, and they said, "Hey, how did Joey D do in the pool today?" And his first line was, "Well, he did okay, but we could tell fairly early on he didn't have a lot of aquatic experience." And he was spot on with that. So it's been a lot of fun, and hopefully we can continue it here in the future.
So I guess if we're ranking all of the sports in your wheelhouse, swimming's last. What's first?
Well, swimming's not last in terms of interest. Swimming is just last maybe in terms of being able to participate.
Yeah, no. Just athletic, just athletic ability.
Just athletic ability. So I think that I did play tennis in high school, So that would probably have to be number one. I wouldn't call myself a great tennis player, but I can still hit the ball back. But I try to keep myself in shape. So I've been very fortunate that I've been able to participate, in all the practices without really having any kind of problem. It's just that some I think I'm a little more qualified than others. Like field hockey was not easy. I did not play volleyball in any way, shape, or form in any competitive way growing up as a kid. But, I can shoot a basketball and I can catch the football. So I've been able to acclimate a little bit to those. What I come away from all the practices with, though, is having just an incredible amount of respect for the level of conditioning and talent that it takes to be a Division I student athlete. Because I may be out there and I'm getting involved in a couple of drills, but when you watch these men and women perform at the level they're at, you get a real appreciation, which you don't always get just maybe by watching a game here or there. You get a real appreciation of the talent level and the fitness level of what it takes to be a Division I student athlete.
Joe, as we close things out here, we talked a lot about this league and about the member institutions and the TV deals and all the other things around it. If you took just a couple of minutes to talk to the fans of this league, because they are obviously going to hear this, what's your message to the fans of this league?
Well, I think my message is that, where we at the CAA in a really good way are on kind of what I would call the last level of purity within college athletics. We are educating our student athletes at an extremely high level, and we are also competing in the Division I ecostructure in a very high level. And we have 14 institutions now, and Campbell comes in next year, that are committed not only to the overall improvement of their student athletes, but to the overall improvement of their athletic programs. And that leads to great competition and great games and a great fan experience if you have a chance to get out to see a CAA event. So I think that would be my message to everyone, Brian, that I think we're really unique in the level of purity that we have within the conference. We're doing it the right way, and it's an exciting brand of college athletics.
Excellent. Well, we're excited to follow along this rest of the season. So, ladies and gentlemen, Joe D'Antonio, the commissioner of the CAA. Where can our listeners find more about the conference, find the upcoming schedule of games, and, where do you want people tuning in for some CAA content?
Well, you can always go to CAAsports.com, and certainly where all of our games are streamed on Flow Sports. And as we move here into the regular season conference schedule in basketball, as we mentioned, we'll have a package of games on CBS Sports Network. So we're real excited about what's to come and look forward to fans following us.